They caught her pleasuring herself in the dark. 3 alphas, 1 forbidden omega. They thought punishment would break her. She thought submission would kill her. They were both wrong. The Nightshade brothers weren't seeking obedience. They were claiming their fated sovereign. The moon hung heavy over the Nightshade Manor,
hear me
casting
now.
silver
The time for
shadows through
hesitation
Luxara's
is
chamber
over.
window.
Together
She
we
had
are
locked
strong.
the door 3 times, checked it 4. Her hands trembled as she lay back against the silk sheets, her breath coming in shallow gasps. 3 weeks, 21 days since the bonding ceremony. 21 nights of running, hiding, denying what her body screamed for with every heartbeat. Lix pressed her fingers to her lips, remembering the way Zephron's silver eyes had tracked her movements during the ceremony. How Caspian's jaw had tightened when she'd refused to meet his emerald gaze. The knowing smile that had curved Daxon's mouth as if he could see straight through every wall she'd built. Her hand slipped lower, just this once, just to take the edge off the constant ache that had been building since the moment the mate bond had snapped into place. Since the universe had decided without her consent that she belonged to 3 of the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories. She was a scholar. She knew the histories. Knew that triple bonds were rare occurring perhaps once in a century. Knew that sovereign omegas were rarer still, bloodlines thought extinct for generations. But she didn't know she was one. Nobody did. Not yet. Lix closed her eyes, and unbidden the fantasy came. Zephron's hands on her skin, commanding and sure. Caspian's mouth at her throat, teeth grazing the spot where a claiming mark would go. Daxon's voice low and dark, telling her exactly what they would do to her if she stopped running. Her back arched. Heat flooded through her body, that strange electric sensation that came from the bond she'd been trying so desperately to ignore. She was close, so close to the release she'd been chasing for hours. The door exploded inward. 3 massive figures filled the doorway, backlit by the hallway torches. Lix's eyes flew open, her hand freezing mid-movement as pure terror shot through her arousal. Zephron stood in the center, 6 feet 5 inches of controlled fury. Silver eyes blazed in the darkness, fixed on her exposed body with an intensity that made her skin burn. His jaw was carved granite, his shoulders broad enough to block out the moon, the Alpha King, leader of the Nightshade Pack, and according to the bonding ceremony 3 weeks ago, her mate, beside him Caspian. Battle-scarred and brutal emerald eyes tracking the movement of her hand between her thighs. His nostrils flared, scenting her arousal in the air. The warrior, the protector, the one who'd wanted to hunt her down weeks ago. And Daxon. Golden eyes gleaming with dark satisfaction, a knowing smile playing at his lips. The seer, the one who'd probably known she would do this. Who'd probably seen it in one of his visions and told his brothers exactly when to catch her. "Don't stop on our account," Daxon said softly. His voice carried through the room like silk over steel. Lix yanked her hand away, scrambling back against the headboard. She grabbed at the sheets, trying to cover herself, but Zephron's command stopped her cold. "No." One word, absolute authority. Her hands froze. The omega part of her nature, the part she'd been fighting for 3 weeks, wanted to obey immediately, wanted to bare herself completely for her alphas' inspection. She gritted her teeth against the instinct. "How dare you?" she managed, her voice shaking. "This is my private chamber. You have no right." "No right." Caspian's laugh was dark, dangerous. He moved into the room with predatory grace, closing the distance between them. "You're our mate, Lix. Everything about you is our right." "I didn't agree to this." She forced herself to meet his eyes, even as her body betrayed her by growing wetter under their combined gazes. "The bonding was political, required by the council to unite our packs. I never consented to being owned by anyone." Zephron's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those silver depths. Hunger, possession, and beneath it something that looked almost like pain. "You've been avoiding us for 3 weeks, he said, his voice deceptively calm as he entered the room. The door swung shut behind him, and Lix heard the lock click, refusing our summons, declining our invitations, hiding in your chambers. He moved closer, and Lix could smell him now. Cedar and winter night, and something purely devastatingly alpha. Her body responded despite her mind's protest, heat pooling low in her belly. "And pleasuring yourself," Daxon added, taking his place on her other side, "while thinking about us." Lix's breath caught. "I wasn't. Don't lie." Zephron's hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her to meet his eyes. Not roughly, but firmly enough that she couldn't look away. "We can feel it through the bond. Every fantasy, every forbidden thought, every time you touched yourself these past 3 weeks, we knew. We felt your pleasure, your desire, your desperate need for what only we can give you." Shame flooded through her, hot and suffocating. They'd known. The whole time they'd known what she was doing in the dark, what she was imagining. That ends tonight, Daxon said quietly. Too quietly. Caspian reached out his scarred hand, catching her wrist. He brought her fingers to his face, inhaling deeply. You smell like need, like 3 weeks of denial and desperation. Like an Omega who's been trying to satisfy herself when she knows deep down that her fingers will never be enough. Let me go. But even Lix could hear how breathless the words came out, how unconvincing. No, Zephron said simply. You denied us. You broke the bonding covenant, and now you'll face the consequences. Fear spiked through her arousal. What consequences? The three alphas exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind that came from a lifetime of being brothers, of being a unified pack. When Zephron's gaze returned to her, there was something almost sad in it. You will be punished before the entire pack, publicly disciplined for denying your alphas while defiling yourself with forbidden fantasies. The words hit her like a physical blow. No, you can't. We can. Daxon's voice was soft and inexorable. And we will. You agreed to the bonding, Lixara. You stood before the council and the moon goddess and accepted us as your mates. The covenant is absolute. I had a 30-day trial period. Lix's voice rose desperate. She'd studied the ancient laws, knew every loophole, every escape clause. According to the covenant of sovereign rights, any Omega bonded without prior courtship has 30 days to dissolve the union without consequence. I still have time. Check your calendar, little scholar, Caspian said, and there was something dark in his smile. What day is it? Lix's mind raced. The bonding had been on the new moon. That was, her blood ran cold. Day 31, Zephron confirmed. Your trial period ended at midnight. You're ours now, Lixara. Completely, irrevocably, and it's time you learned what that means. She wanted to argue, wanted to cite more laws, more precedents, but the look in their eyes told her it would be useless. She'd miscounted, been so focused on surviving each day that she'd lost track of the calendar. And now she was trapped. Get dressed, Zephron commanded, releasing her chin. Something simple. We want the pack to see exactly what we found you doing. I won't. You will. His alpha voice rolled over her, impossible to resist. Or we'll take you to the grand hall exactly as you are now, naked, marked by your own pleasure, smelling of need and shame. Choose Lix. Her hands shook as she reached for the simple white dress laid across her chair. They'd planned this, probably for days. Waited until her trial period expired until she had no legal ground to stand on. She should have been smarter, should have tracked the days more carefully, but she'd been so consumed by the bond, by the constant pull toward them, by the nightly battle against her own traitorous body, that she'd made a fatal mistake. And now she would pay for it in front of everyone. The walk to the grand hall felt like a death march. Zephron led the way, his massive frame cutting through the darkness. Caspian and Daxon flanked her close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from their bodies. Close enough that their scents wrapped around her, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. Pack members emerged from their quarters as they passed. Curious eyes tracked their progression. Whispers followed in their wake. Is that the new Omega? The one who's been hiding? 3 weeks and she still hasn't submitted. Heard they caught her doing something forbidden. Lix kept her eyes down, her bare feet silent on the cold stone floors. She'd refused to wear shoes. A small rebellion, insignificant in the face of what was coming, but it was all she had left. The grand hall loomed ahead, its massive doors already open. Torchlight spilled out into the corridor, and Lix could hear the murmur of voices inside. How many pack members had they summoned? How many witnesses would there be to her humiliation? Too many. The hall fell silent as they entered. Lix forced herself to look up to take in the scene. At least 100 wolves filled the space, maybe more. Pack members of every rank, from the highest-born alphas to the lowest omegas. The council sat on their raised platform, 12 ancient wolves who governed pack law, and in the center of it all, clear space where she would kneel, where she would be judged. Zephron's hands settled on the small of her back, guiding her forward. Not pushing, not forcing, just inexorably directing her toward the center of the hall, toward her punishment. Members of Nightshade Pack, Zephron's voice rang out, commanding and clear. We are gathered to witness the discipline of our bonded Omega, Lixara Moonshadow, who has violated the sacred covenant of mating. Lix's knees hit the cold stone floor before she realized she'd been commanded to kneel. The alpha voice, impossible to resist when delivered with that much power. State the charges, one of the council elders demanded. Magistrate Theron, ancient and severe, his blind eyes somehow seeing everything. Daxon stepped forward. 3 weeks ago, Lixara accepted the mate bond with myself and my brothers. She stood before this council, before the moon goddess herself, and swore the sacred oaths. Yet from that moment until this one, she has denied us, refused our summons, avoided our presence, rejected every attempt at bonding. Is this true, Omega Mushroom? Magistrate Theron's milky gaze turned toward her. Lix's voice was steady when she answered. I fulfilled the ceremony as required. I never refused to honor the political alliance our bonding represents. But I claim my right to the 30-day trial period as is law. A right that expired at midnight, Zephyrin interrupted, making tonight's transgression even more severe. Caspian circled her slowly, and Lix could feel every eye in the hall tracking his movement. We found her in her chambers, door locked, lights dimmed, and her hands. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Her hands were buried between her thighs, pleasuring herself while thinking forbidden thoughts about her alphas. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This was it, the moment of complete humiliation. She was touching what belongs to us, Caspian continued, his voice hard, seeking satisfaction from her own fingers rather than accepting what we could give her, denying us while defiling herself with fantasies of our claiming. Fantasies you had no right to witness. Lix's head snapped, a fury overriding shame. The bond doesn't give you permission to invade my thoughts, my privacy, my body. The bond gives us everything, Zephyrin said, quietly, but his voice carried through the hall. And you know it. You've studied the laws, little scholar. You know exactly what a mate bond means, what it requires, what it allows. He knelt before her, his silver eyes level with hers. You are ours, Lixara. Every breath, every heartbeat, every trembling gasp of pleasure. It all belongs to us. And tonight you'll learn what happens when you try to deny that truth. Magistrate Theron's staff struck the stone floor 3 times. The charges are proven. What punishment do you seek, alphas? The 3 brothers exchanged another of those silent communications. Then Zephyrin spoke, and his words sealed her fate. 4 days of discipline, 4 nights of training. We will break her resistance, not through force, but through undeniable pleasure. We will make her crave what only we can provide. And when those 4 days end, she will either beg to complete the bond, or we will release her from the covenant entirely and let her leave our pack forever. Shocked murmurs filled the hall. That wasn't standard punishment. That was, you're giving me a choice, Lix breathed. We're giving you truth, Daxon said. 4 days to learn what the mate bond truly means, what we can give you, what you'll lose if you walk away. And at the end you choose. Freely, completely. Stay and accept us, or leave and never look back. It was more than she'd expected. More mercy than pack law required. But as Lix looked at the 3 massive alphas surrounding her, she realized the trap. 4 days of systematic seduction. 4 nights of them proving their claim. She would never survive it with her resistance intact. They knew it. The whole pack knew it. This wasn't punishment. It was conquest. Does the Omega accept these terms? Magistrate Theron demanded. Lix's mind raced. If she refused, they could invoke harsher penalties. Could claim she'd violated the covenant beyond redemption. Could force complete submission without any choice at all. At least this way, she still had an escape. 4 days from now, she could walk away. Could leave the pack, leave the territory, start over somewhere far from these 3 alphas who made her body sing and her mind rebel in equal measure. 4 days. She could endure 4 days. I accept, she said, her voice clear despite the trembling in her hands. Zephron's smile was predatory, knowing. Good, then let's begin. He stood, offering her his hand. Lix stared at it for a long moment before placing her palm in his. The contact sent sparks racing up her arm, the mate bond flaring to life. Zephyrin pulled her to her feet, then turned to address the pack. For 4 days, our mate will learn what it means to belong to the Nightshade brothers. She will learn obedience through pleasure, submission through choice acceptance, through undeniable satisfaction. And when those 4 days end, she will make her decision before this council. To stay or to go. He paused, his hand tightening fractionally on hers. But I promise you this, by the time those 4 days end, she won't want to leave. She won't be able to imagine a life without us. She'll be so thoroughly addicted to what we give her that the thought of walking away will be unbearable. The arrogance, the absolute certainty in his voice. It should have enraged her. Instead, looking into those silver eyes, feeling the heat of his body so close to hers, Lix felt the first flicker of fear. Because part of her believed him. The pack dispersed slowly, reluctantly. They'd witnessed the judgment, the sentencing. Now they wanted to see the execution of punishment, but Zephron's commanding presence sent them away. This first night would be private. Lix's chambers had been transformed in the brief time she'd been gone. The door that had been locked now stood open, the locks removed entirely. The room had been lit with dozens of candles, casting everything in warm, flickering gold. And in the center where her bed had been was something new. A larger bed, massive, built to accommodate 4 bodies instead of 1. No, Lix breathed, taking a step back. She collided with Caspian's chest, solid and immovable. Yes, he said, his hands settling on her shoulders. Not pushing, just present, grounding. For 4 days, you don't hide from us. You don't run. You stay where we can see you, touch, you teach you. You can't expect me to share a bed with you. We expect nothing, Daxon said, moving to close the door behind them. Except honesty. Except you to stay when every instinct tells you to flee. Except you to let us show you what you've been missing. Zephron approached her slowly, giving her time to see him coming. When he reached her, his hand came up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. We know you're afraid, Lix. We can feel it through the bond. Fear and arousal and shame all tangled together. But you need to understand something. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. We don't want to break you. We want to free you. From the walls you've built, from the lies you've told yourself, from the belief that strength means being alone. I'm not afraid, she lied. All 3 alphas smiled, because they could feel the truth through the bond, could sense every emotion she tried to hide. 4 days, Zephron said again. Starting now. He released her and began removing his jacket. The formal coat of the Alpha King, heavy with emblems and authority. Beneath it, his shirt stretched across shoulders built for battle. Lix's breath caught as he started on the buttons. What are you doing? Getting comfortable, Caspian said from behind her. She heard the rustle of fabric, knew he was undressing too. It's late, time for sleep. I'm not sleeping in that bed with you. Then you'll stand all night, Daxon said reasonably, already down to his undershirt. Because we're not leaving, and we're certainly not letting you lock yourself away again. They were serious. They were actually going to sleep here in her room in that massive bed they'd installed. The first night of 4, the beginning of her systematic seduction. Lix watched as Zephron stripped down to sleep pants, his torso a canvas of muscle and scars. Caspian was even more marked, his warrior's body a testament to countless battles. Daxon was leaner but no less powerful, moving with a dangerous grace that made her pulse quicken. They climbed into the bed, taking positions that left the center space open, waiting for her. Last chance to choose the easy path, Zephron said, his silver eyes gleaming in the candlelight. Come to bed willingly or we carry you. Either way, you're sleeping between us tonight. Lix's hands clenched into fists. She could fight, could rage and scream and make this as difficult as possible. But what would it gain her? They were bigger, stronger, and they had the absolute backing of pack law. She'd already accepted the terms. 4 days, just 4 days, and then she could leave. She climbed into the bed stiffly, staying as far from all 3 of them as the space would allow. The sheets were silk against her skin, far finer than anything she'd owned before. The mattress molded to her body perfectly. And despite her intentions, the moment she laid down, exhaustion crashed over her. 3 weeks of running, 3 weeks of broken sleep and constant vigilance, 3 weeks of fighting her own nature. It had taken its toll. Daxon moved first, his arm settling across her waist. Lix stiffened, but his hold was loose, comforting rather than constraining. Then Caspian shifted closer, his warmth at her back. And finally Zephron, facing her in the darkness. Sleep, little scholar, he murmured. Tomorrow your real education begins. Lix wanted to stay awake, wanted to remain vigilant, but surrounded by their heat, their sense, their steady breathing, her body betrayed her. The mate bond purred with satisfaction, finally having all 4 of them together. She fell asleep between 3 alphas, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she didn't dream of running. She dreamed of surrender. Morning came with golden light streaming through the windows and a strange warm weight across her body. Lix surfaced from sleep, slowly consciousness returning in fragments. Warm. She was so warm. And she didn't hurt. For 3 weeks she'd woken with tension, headaches, and body aches from the stress of fighting the bond. But now, her eyes flew open. Daxon's face was inches from hers, his golden eyes already awake and watching. His arm was still around her waist, but now Caspian's leg was thrown over hers, pinning her lower half. And Zephron's hand rested on her hip, possessive even in sleep. She was trapped, thoroughly, completely. Good morning, Daxon said softly. Sleep well. Lix tried to move, but the moment she shifted, Caspian's arm tightened. Still asleep, but his warrior instincts wouldn't let her escape. "Let me go," she said, proud when her voice didn't shake. "Why Diana?" Daxon's question was genuinely curious. "You're comfortable. We're comfortable. The bond is satisfied. Why fight what feels good? Because I don't want this." Your body disagrees. His eyes dropped to where her nipples had hardened beneath the thin fabric of her nightgown. Your scent disagrees. The bond disagrees. Only your stubborn mind keeps lying licks. And we have 4 days to prove it wrong. Zephyrin stirred his silver eyes, opening immediately. He assessed the situation in a heartbeat, a slow smile crossing his face when he saw Lick's trap between them. "Morning already." His voice was rough with sleep, somehow even more devastating than usual. "Feels like we just closed our eyes." He stretched the movement, making muscles ripple across his torso. Lix tried very hard not to stare, failed miserably. "Caspian," Zephyrin said, "release our mate. She'll want to bathe before breakfast." The warrior grumbled, but obeyed, his eyes opening to pin Lix with an emerald stare. "You stayed." "I was pinned," she corrected. "You could have shifted," Caspian pointed out. "Could have gone wolf and slipped away. But you didn't, because part of you wanted to stay right here, wrapped up in us." Had she Lix searched her memories of the night? There had been moments of waking, brief surfaces to consciousness, and each time she'd felt the weight of them around her and drifted back to sleep. Content. Safe. No, she refused to accept that. "I was exhausted," she said firmly. "Nothing more." "Whatever helps you sleep, little scholar." Daxon released her, rolling away to give her space. "But you have 15 minutes to bathe and dress. Then we eat. Together. As a bonded unit should." Lix fled to the bathing room, closing the door behind her with more force than necessary. The mirror showed her exactly what she'd feared. Her hair was mussed from sleep, her lips slightly swollen from breathing in their scents all night, her eyes bright with something that looked too much like satisfaction. She looked like someone who'd spent the night wrapped in her mate's arms, someone who'd enjoyed it. The bath did nothing to cool the heat in her blood. If anything, the warm water made it worse, made her hyper-aware of every inch of skin. Made her remember how Caspian's hand had felt on her hip, how Daxon's breath had ghosted across her neck. By the time she emerged dressed in simple leggings and an oversized sweater, the brothers were waiting. They dressed as well, though all three of them looked impossibly good, even in casual clothing. Breakfast was laid out in the sitting room. Fresh bread, honey fruit, cheese. The kind of morning meal she'd never bothered with when living alone. They'd thought of everything. "Sit," Zephyrin commanded, gesturing to the chair between his and Daxon's positions. Lix sat, picked at the food, tried to ignore how aware she was of their proximity, their sense, the constant hum of the bond. "Today's lesson is simple," Zephyrin said, his tone conversational as he broke bread. "You'll spend the day with us. See how we work, how we lead, how we care for the pack. No punishment, no discipline, just observation." "And tonight," Lix couldn't help asking. Caspian's smile was slow and dangerous. "Tonight we begin teaching you about pleasure. Real pleasure. The kind your fingers could never provide." Heat flooded through her. "I won't." "You will," Daxon interrupted gently. "Because you're curious. Because despite your fear and your pride, you want to know. Want to understand why your body responds to us the way it does. Why the bond pulls so hard." He wasn't wrong. Damn him. The day passed in a blur. Lix followed them through their routines, watching as Zephyrin held court, settling disputes with fairness and strength. As Caspian trained warriors, his tactical mind evident in every drill. As Daxon walked the pack lands, his visions guiding their preparations for winter. And everywhere they went, pack members watched, saw her beside the brothers, saw how they made space for her, included her, valued her input when she offered it. By evening, Lix was exhausted and confused. They hadn't touched her beyond casual contact, hadn't pushed or demanded, just included her, as if she belonged. It was more dangerous than any punishment. Dinner was quiet, just the four of them, the massive bed looming in the background like a promise or a threat. "Time for your first real lesson," Zephyrin said when the plates were cleared. Lix's heart hammered. "What kind of lesson?" "Trust," he said simply. "Before anything else, you need to learn to trust us. Trust that we won't hurt you, won't take more than you're willing to give, won't use the bond to force you into anything." He stood, offering his hand again. "Come here, Lix." She shouldn't. Every instinct screamed to refuse. But Daxon's words from breakfast echoed in her mind. "You're curious." She was. Moon help her, she was. Lix placed her hand in Zephron's and let him pull her to her feet. He led her to the bed, sitting on the edge and positioning her between his spread thighs. Caspian and Daxon took positions on either side, close but not touching. Just sensation, Zephyrin murmured. Just teaching your body what it's been craving. No expectations, no demands, just pleasure. If you want us to stop, say the word and we stop. Understood. Lix nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Good girl. His hands settled on her waist, thumbs brushing against the strip of skin where her sweater had ridden up. The touch was electric. Lix gasped, and Zephyrn's smile was knowing. The bond amplifies everything. Every touch, every sensation. That's why your fingers were never enough. Because they couldn't trigger the bond the way we can. His hands slid higher, barely grazing the underside of her breast through the sweater. Lix's head fell back, a whimper escaping before she could stop it. That's it, Daxon encouraged from her left. Don't fight it, just feel. Caspian's hand settled on her lower back, steadying her as Zephron's touch grew bolder. His palms cupped her breasts, now thumbs circling over hardened peaks, and Lix couldn't stop the moan that tore from her throat. Please, she gasped, not even sure what she was begging for. Please, what? Zephron's voice was rough. Please stop, or please more. I can't. You can. His hand stilled. Tell us, Lix, what do you want? The words stuck in her throat. Admitting want meant admitting defeat, meant acknowledging they were right about everything. But her body didn't care about pride. Her body knew what it needed. More, she whispered. Please, more. Zephyrn's answering growl was pure satisfaction. His hands resumed their exploration, and this time Caspian and Daxon joined in. Hands on her thighs, her back, her neck. Never intrusive, never overwhelming, but constant, present, worshipping. They touched her through her clothes until she was trembling, until she was making sounds she'd never heard herself make, until the pleasure built so high she thought she might shatter. And then, just as she was about to tip over that edge, they stopped. Lix's eyes flew open, protest on her lips. Why boad? Not tonight, Zephyrn said, though she could see the strain in his expression, the evidence of his own arousal. Tonight was about trust, about showing you we can give pleasure without taking, that we have control even when you're falling apart in our arms. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, achingly gentle. Tomorrow we'll go further. Tomorrow we'll teach you about anticipation, about the pleasure of waiting, about how good it feels to surrender just a little more. They put her to bed between them again, her body still humming with unfulfilled need. But this time when she drifted to sleep, it wasn't with resentment. It was with anticipation. Day 2 dawned with the same warm tangle of limbs. But Lix didn't startle this time, didn't fight, just opened her eyes to find Daxon watching her again, that small smile on his lips. You're getting used to us, he observed. Maybe she was. Maybe that was the most terrifying part. The day followed a similar pattern. Observation, inclusion, casual touches that set her nerves alight. But tonight, Zephyrn had promised would be different. Anticipation. The pleasure of waiting. After dinner, they brought her to the bed again. But this time, Caspian produced something from a drawer, a length of silk soft and dark as midnight. What is that? Lix asked, though she could guess. A blindfold, Caspian said. Tonight you learn to feel without seeing, to trust us to guide you through pleasure when you can't anticipate what's coming next. Her heart raced. I'm not sure. Safe word, Zephron interrupted. Choose one now. One word that stops everything immediately. Lix thought. Scholar. Good. He cupped her face. Can you trust us this much, Lix? Can you surrender your sight and let us show you what we promised? Could she 2 days ago, the answer would have been an absolute no. But now, after a day and a half of them keeping every promise, respecting every boundary, showing her pleasure without taking anything in return. Yes, she breathed. The blindfold settled over her eyes and the world went dark. Her other senses immediately sharpened. She could hear their breathing smell, their distinct scents, feel the slight shifts in air pressure as they moved around her. Lie back, came Daxon's voice, and she obeyed without thinking. Hands settled on her ankles, spreading her legs slightly. Not far, not uncomfortable, just open, vulnerable. We're going to touch you, Zephyrn said from somewhere above. And you're going to tell us how it feels. Don't hold back. Don't hide. Just honest reactions. A touch on her collarbone, feather light, tracing down to the valley between her breasts. How does that feel? Good, Lix whispered. Just good. Like lightning, like fire. Better. Fingers on her ribs now mapping every curve. And this, ticklish, but good, still good. They learned her body slowly, methodically. every sensitive spot, every place that made her gasp or arch or moan. And through it all, Lix found herself obeying Zephron's command, voicing every sensation, every flicker of pleasure, being honest, in a way she'd never been with anyone, not even herself. When they finally removed the blindfold, her vision swam with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Not sad tears, overwhelmed tears, grateful tears. Tomorrow, Zephron said, his voice thick with restrained desire, we teach you about giving, about how pleasure flows both ways, about touching us the way we've touched you. Lix nodded, unable to speak, unable to think beyond the haze of satisfied exhaustion. They held her that night, three massive bodies curved around hers protectively. And as she drifted off, Lix realized something terrifying. She was only on day 2, and she was already starting to crave them, already starting to need them. The pleasure they gave so freely, the care they showed so constantly. 2 more days. She had 2 more days to resist the inevitable. But as Daxon's knowing smile suggested, Lix wondered if resistance had ever really been possible, or if from the moment they'd caught her in the dark, her fate had already been sealed. Day 3 arrived differently. Lix woke to find herself alone in the massive bed, though the sheets still held the warmth of 3 bodies. A note rested on Zephron's pillow, written in his precise hand. Training room. When you're ready, no rush. The consideration in those 3 words made something in her chest tighten. They could have commanded her presence, could have woken her and demanded she follow. Instead, they gave her space, time, choice. It was more dangerous than any order could have been. Lix found them in the Eastern Training Hall, a massive space where warriors honed their skills. But this morning, the brothers were alone, moving through combat forms with a synchronization that spoke of decades fighting side by side. They wore only loose training pants, their torsos bare and gleaming with sweat. She stopped in the doorway, unable to look away. Zephron moved like power, contained every strike, precise and devastating. Caspian was brutal efficiency, his scarred body a weapon honed by countless battles. And Daxon deceptively graceful, his movements hiding lethal intent beneath flowing forms. They were beautiful, terrifying, hers. The thought came unbidden, and Lix caught her breath at the possessiveness in it. When had she started thinking of them as hers instead of herself as theirs? Daxon's golden eyes found her first. He stilled mid-strike, a smile crossing his face. She watches. The other 2 turned, and the combined weight of their gazes made heat pool low in her belly. Zephron crossed to her in 3 long strides, not bothering to hide his pleasure at seeing her. Good morning, little scholar. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Sleep well without us. No, she admitted before she could stop herself. His smile was triumphant. Good. Today you learned to touch us, to give the pleasure you've been receiving, to understand that the bond flows both ways. Lix's heart hammered. I don't know how. We'll teach you, Caspian said, moving to her other side, just like we've taught you everything else, with patience, with care, and with absolute honesty about what feels good. They led her to a private chamber off the training hall. Soft mats covered the floor and the morning light streamed through high windows. It was intimate without being oppressive, warm without being stifling. Zephron sat on the mats, gesturing for her to join him. Start simple. Touch me. Anywhere you want. Explore. Learn. Lix knelt before him, her hands trembling slightly. She'd never touched a man this way. Never allowed herself to want to. But now, with permission granted and curiosity burning through her resistance, she reached out. Her fingers settled on his shoulder first. Smooth skin over hard muscle. She traced the line of his collarbone, fascinated by the contrast between his strength and her softness. His breathing change deepened, and she looked up to find his silver eyes dark with desire. Keep going, he encouraged, his voice rough. Touch wherever you want. She grew bolder. Mapped the planes of his chest, the ridges of his abdomen, the scars that told stories of battles won and survived. And with each touch, she felt the bond pulse between them, felt his pleasure echo through the connection. It was intoxicating, addictive, having this kind of power over someone so strong. Caspian moved behind her, his hands settling on her waist. Our turn, he murmured against her ear. You touch Zephron, we touch you. Fair exchange. His hands slid beneath her shirt, palms warm against her bare skin. Daxon knelt beside them, his fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her head back for a kiss that stole her breath. This was the lesson. Give and receive. Pleasure flowing in all directions. The bond lighting up like lightning with every touch, every gasp, every moment of surrender. They brought her to the edge 3 times that morning. 3 times they pulled her back just before she could fall, teaching her anticipation. teaching her to trust that the pleasure would come when they decided it was time. And when they finally let her shatter. It was Zephron's name on her lips and their hands holding her together as she fell apart. Afterward, lying boneless between them, Lix realized the terrible truth. She was already addicted, already craving them more than air, more than pride, more than the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. 3 days. It had only taken 3 days to completely unravel her resistance. That afternoon, Zephron made an announcement. The pack needs to see you beside us, not as a prisoner or a conquest, but as our mate, our equal, our Luna to be. Luna. The title sent a shiver through her, leader, partner, queen of the Nightshade pack. I'm not ready for them, Lix protested. You are. Daxon's certainty was absolute. You've been ready from the moment you stepped into this pack. You just didn't know it yet. They dressed her in deep purple silk, the color of her hidden bloodline, though they didn't know it yet. The gown hugged her curves and flowed like water, making her look regal in a way her simple scholar's clothes never had. When Lix looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes were brighter, her skin glowing with the satisfaction of 3 days in her Alphaz's arms. Her hair fell in dark waves around her shoulders, and the claiming marks they'd left on her throat were visible for anyone to see. She looked claimed, possessed, utterly theirs, and for the first time she didn't hate it. The pack gathered in the great courtyard for the weekly assembly. Hundreds of wolves, all ranks and ages, come to hear their Alpha King speak. Lix stood beside Zephron on the raised platform, Caspian and Daxon flanking her other side. Every eye in the courtyard was on her. Zephron's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers publicly, claiming her before everyone. This is Lixara Moonshadow, my mate, my Luna, and from this day forward she speaks with my authority. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Giving her authority after only 3 days was unprecedented. But Zephron's expression brooked no argument. She will sit on council meetings. She will hear disputes. She will help guide this pack into our future. Any who question her position question me. Is that understood? The pack's acknowledgement came in waves. Some eager, some uncertain, some resentful. Lix could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their doubt. But she could also feel something else. Power. Rising from somewhere deep inside her, responding to the recognition of her status. Her eyes started to tingle and she blinked rapidly, trying to clear the strange sensation. In the crowd, a woman stepped forward, beautiful and cold with platinum hair and ice blue eyes. She wore the colors of high nobility, her bearing screaming aristocracy. Seraphine Thornbrook. Lix recognized her from pack records, one of the wealthiest alphas in the territory, and according to gossip, Zephron's intended mate before the council had arranged his bonding to Lix instead. My king, Seraphine's voice carried across the courtyard, dripping with false courtesy. Forgive my boldness, but surely you move too quickly. 3 days is hardly enough time to determine if this Omega is suitable for the Luna position. Zephron's hand tightened on Lix's. I determine what is suitable for my pack, Lady Thornbrook. Not you. Of course. Seraphine's smile was sharp as a blade. I merely worry that you've been distracted by the mate bond. Surely someone of more appropriate breeding, more experience in leadership, more like you. Caspian's voice was dangerous. Is that what you're suggesting? Seraphine's mask slipped for just a moment, showing the rage beneath. I suggest nothing. I merely observe that placing an untried Omega in a position of power over wolves who have served this pack for generations seems unwise. Lix felt the insult like a physical blow. Untried, unsuitable, less than. The old her would have stayed silent, would have let Zephron defend her. But something was shifting inside her, that strange power responding to the challenge, to the threat against her position. Her mates. You question my fitness to lead. Lix stepped forward, releasing Zephron's hand. Her voice rang out clear and strong. Then question my knowledge of pack law. Question my understanding of alliance politics. Question my strategic analysis of our territory's vulnerabilities. She descended the platform steps, moving towards Seraphine with a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. But don't question my bond. Don't question my mate's judgment. And certainly don't mistake kindness for weakness. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Brave words for someone who's only been in this pack for 3 weeks. What do you know of leadership, of sacrifice, of the burden of power? I know that true power doesn't need to tear others down to build itself up, Lix said quietly. I know that leadership means protecting the vulnerable, not using them as pawns. And I know that you're not concerned about the pack's welfare. You're concerned about losing something you never actually had. The courtyard had gone deathly silent. Every wolf watching the confrontation between the new Luna and the highborn Alpha, who clearly wanted her position. Seraphine took a step closer, her alpha aura pressing against the Lix in a clear dominance play. You have no idea what you're talking about, little Omega. The Council had other plans before you arrived. Better plans. Plans that would have secured this pack's future through proper bloodlines and, before she could finish, a howl split the air. The alarm, the border warning, attack. Chaos erupted. Warriors shifted, racing toward the northern border. Civilians fled toward secure buildings. The peaceful assembly transformed into a war mobilization in seconds. Zephron grabbed Lix's arm. Inside now. You stay protected until... No, the word came out with more force than she'd intended. If they're attacking because of me, I need to be there, need to understand what's happening. Absolutely not, Caspian snarled. You're untrained in combat. You'd be a liability. The words stung, but they were true. Lix had never learned to fight, never shifted in battle. But something inside her was screaming that this attack was connected to everything Seraphine had just revealed. Connected to the secrets about her bloodline. Then teach me, she demanded. Quickly, whatever I need to know to not be a liability. But don't lock me away while you fight battles that are about me. The three brothers exchanged one of their silent communications. Then Zephron nodded sharply. Daxon stays with her, teaches her basic defense. Caspian and I lead the warriors. If anyone gets past us, you know what to do. Daxon's smile was grim. Protect our mate with my life. Already planned on it. They moved as one, racing toward the border. Lix could hear the sounds of battle now, snarls and screams carrying on the wind. Whatever was attacking it was big, organized, not random, planned. Daxon pulled her behind a defensive barrier, his hands already shifting to show her basic blocking techniques. Keep your center low, use their momentum against them. If something gets through, aim for throats and eyes, no honor in survival. Lix tried to focus on his instructions, but her attention kept pulling toward the battle, toward where Zephron and Caspian fought with devastating efficiency. They were incredible, moving in perfect sync, reading each other's intentions without words. And the enemy wolves? There was something wrong with them. Their eyes glowed red instead of the normal gold of shifted wolves. Their movements were erratic, almost rabid. Blood moss, Daxon breathed. Someone's drugged them with blood moss. Makes them fearless, nearly immune to pain, and absolutely loyal to whoever controls the supply. Who would do that? Lix asked, though dread was already building in her chest. Someone with resources, someone who wanted to create chaos, make a statement. Daxon's golden eyes found hers. Someone who wanted to test our defenses and see how we'd react to a threat against you. A massive wolf broke through the defensive line, heading straight for them. Red eyes fixed on Lix with singular focus. Target acquired. Daxon shifted in a heartbeat, his wolf form massive and golden brown. He met the attacker mid-leap, and the two wolves went down in a snarling mass of fur and fangs. Lix pressed back against the barrier, her heart hammering. She should shift, should help. But she'd never shifted in combat, barely shifted at all. Her wolf was small and untrained, and the red-eyed wolf threw Daxon aside, slamming him into a stone wall. The golden alpha went down hard, stunned, and the enemy wolf turned toward Lix. Terror froze her in place. This was it. She was going to die because she was too weak, too untrained, too useless to defend herself. No, the thought came from somewhere deep inside. Not useless. Never useless. Just untapped. Unawakened. The wolf lunged. Lix's eyes flared violet. Power exploded outward from her in a wave of pure energy. The attacking wolf froze midair, suspended by invisible force. Its red eyes went wide with shock and fear, and then impossibly it dropped to the ground, whimpering, submitting to her. Lix stared at her hands, at the violet light still crackling around her fingers. What was happening? What was this? The battle was ending. The drugged wolves were fleeing or surrendering, their red eyes fading to normal as whatever drug controlled them wore off. Zephron and Caspian raced back toward her, their eyes widening when they saw the wolf prostrate at her feet, saw the violet energy surrounding her. Lix, Zephron breathed. Your eyes. She could feel them, glowing, burning with power she'd never known she possessed. And on her skin, silver marks were appearing, ancient symbols that looked like they'd been tattooed there but were actually rising from within. Sovereign, Daxon whispered, pulling himself upright. His vision sight was active, his golden eyes seeing beyond the physical. She's sovereign bloodline, the last of the moon goddesses chosen. That's why the council was so eager to bind her. That's why they hid her identity. She's not just an Omega. She's royalty. The world spun. Lix reached for something to steady herself and found Caspian's arms catching her. I don't understand. I'm nobody. Just a scholar. Just, just the most powerful Omega born in 300 years, a new voice said. Lix turned to see Seraphine standing at the edge of the courtyard, her expression stricken. Not triumphant, genuinely shocked. I didn't know, Seraphine said quietly. When Councilman Marcus asked me to challenge you when he said the bond should be questioned, I didn't know what you were, what you carried. He told me you were just a political pawn, someone unsuitable who needed to be removed so proper alliances could be made. Marcus is behind this, Daxon said. The attack. The drugged wolves, he's been manipulating us all. Why? Lix asked. What does he gain? Control of you, Zephyrin said grimly. Sovereign Omegas can command any wolf. Alpha Beta Omega doesn't matter. Your word becomes law to any shifter who hears it. With that kind of power, you could unite or destroy entire territories. Or, Caspian added darkly, someone could use you as a weapon if they controlled you. If they broke your bond to us and formed a new one. To someone more malleable to council influence. The implications made Lix sick. She'd been a pawn her whole life and never known it. Hidden away, kept weak and ignorant, all so she could be controlled when her power finally manifested. But before they could discuss further, Lix felt something else. A wave of heat rolling through her body. Her skin flushed, her breathing quickened, and her vision swam. No, not now. Not when they needed her clear-headed and strong. But her body didn't care about timing. Her first heat was coming triggered by the stress of battle and the surge of power. And it was coming fast. Zeph, she gasped, reaching for Hoidim. Something's wrong. I feel... All three brothers went rigid, their nostrils flaring. They could scent it. The sweet, overwhelming scent of an Omega going into heat, made 1,000 times more potent by her sovereign bloodline. Get her inside, Caspian ordered. Now, before every unmated wolf in the territory goes insane. They moved quickly, surrounding her protectively as they raced back toward their chambers. Lix could barely walk, the heat consuming her from the inside out. Every nerve ending was on fire. Every cell in her body screamed for her mates. For completion. For claiming. For the bond to be sealed permanently through the biological imperative of heat. They got her to the chambers and locked the door. Lix collapsed onto the bed, her whole body trembling. This was worse than anything she'd imagined. Worse than the stories, the clinical descriptions in her scholarly texts. This was agony. Beautiful, terrible, all-consuming agony. Zephyrin knelt beside the bed, his face tight with concern and barely restrained desire. Lix, look at me. Focus. She could barely see him through the haze. Make it stop, please. I can't. It's too much. We can help, he said, his voice strained. We can ease this, but only if you choose it. Only if you want us to complete the bond. This is permanent, little scholar. Once we claim you in heat, there's no going back. No breaking it. No changing your mind. Through the pain and the heat and the desperate need, Lix understood what they were offering. Freedom. Even now, even when her body was demanding them, even when the mate bond was screaming for completion, they would walk away if she asked. Because they'd meant every word, her choice, always. And in that moment, Lix finally understood. This wasn't surrender, wasn't defeat, wasn't giving up her independence or her strength. This was choosing, and actively, deliberately, choosing them, choosing the bond, choosing to let herself be loved and claimed and protected, not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to accept it. Stay, she whispered. Please, I choose you, all of you. I choose this. Zephyr's eyes flared silver. You're sure once we start? I'm sure. Lix reached for him for all of them. I've been sure since day 3. Maybe since the moment you caught me. I've just been too afraid to admit it. No more fear, Caspian promised, his hands already moving to her overheated skin. No more running. From this moment on, you're ours. And we're yours. Forever. What followed was hours of intensity that Lix would never find words to describe. They claimed her together, their mate bonds sealing one by one in waves of pleasure so overwhelming she lost consciousness more than once. When she came back to herself each time they were there, holding her, praising her, loving her, the violet marks on her skin spread and settled, forming intricate patterns that declared her bloodline to anyone who could see. Her eyes stayed violet even when the heat finally faded, a permanent marker of her sovereign status. And the bond. The bond was complete, unbreakable. She could feel them now, not just emotions, but thoughts, intentions, presence. They were part of her, and she was part of them, woven together in a way that transcended physical connection. When dawn finally came, Lix lay between her three mates, completely claimed and utterly satisfied. Her body ached in the best possible way. Her mind was clear for the first time in weeks, and her heart was full. They let her rest for hours, the three brothers taking turns keeping watch, while she slept off the exhaustion of heat and bonding. When Lix finally stirred, the sun was high in the sky, and Zephron was beside her, his hand gentle in her hair. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. "Different," Lix murmured. "Complete, like I've been missing pieces of myself and just found them." "The bond is fully sealed now," Daxon explained from her other side. "We can feel you like you can feel us. Thoughts, emotions, intentions. We're connected in ways most mates never achieve. And your sovereign power," Caspian added, "it's stabilized, no longer wild and uncontrolled. You can access it now without it overwhelming you." Lix sat up slowly, testing the truth of his words. The violet marks on her skin glowed softly, and when she concentrated, she could feel the power humming just beneath the surface. Ready, waiting, under her control. "What happens now?" she asked. Zephron's expression grew serious. "Now we deal with the council, with Marcus, with whatever conspiracy has been building around you." "There's more," Daxon said quietly, his vision sight active. "I can see it. Someone else is coming. Someone with a claim to you. Someone who's been waiting for you to awaken." Lix's stomach clenched. "Who?" "I can't see clearly yet, but family. Someone from your bloodline. Someone who knows what you are and wants to use you for their own purposes." "My family is dead," Lix said. "My parents died when I was a child. I have no siblings, no cousins, no one." "Everyone thought sovereign bloodlines were extinct too," Caspian pointed out. "Clearly there's more to your history than you were told." A knock on the door interrupted them. Urgent, insistent. Zephron growled but rose to answer it. A young messenger stood there, his face pale. "My king, the council demands your presence, immediately. They say someone has arrived. Someone claiming the right to the sovereign Omega. Someone claiming to be her closest living relative." Lix's blood ran cold. "That's impossible." "He has proof," the messenger said. "Documents, bloodline records. And he's demanding that according to ancient law, you be turned over to his custody until your majority at age 25. He says the mate bond is invalid because you weren't of legal age to consent without family approval." "Who?" Zephron's voice was deadly. "Who is making this claim?" The messenger swallowed hard. "Malachar Moonshadow, Alpha Supreme of the Eastern Territories. He says he's Lixara's uncle, her father's brother, and he's come to take her home." The world tilted. Lix sat up the sheet, falling away, violet eyes blazing with sudden understanding and rage. "My uncle," she breathed. "The one my mother warned me about in her journal. The one she said could never find me. The one who—" Her eyes widened. "The one who killed my parents and took their territory. He's alive, he's here, and he's come to finish what he started." The three alphas moved as one, surrounding her protectively. But they all knew the terrible truth. If Malachar had legal claim, if he could prove his bloodline, and her age pack law might force them to hand her over. Unless they could prove his crimes first. Unless they could expose him before the council. Unless they were willing to go to war to keep their mate. Zephron's silver eyes met Lix's violet ones, and she saw the answer there. Saw it reflected in Caspian's emerald gaze and Daxon's golden stare. They would burn the world down before letting anyone take her. "Get dressed," Zephron commanded softly. "All of us. We face the council together. And we end this. Today. Now. Whatever it takes." Lix nodded, power thrumming through her veins. Sovereign power. Mate bond power. And the righteous fury of someone who'd been used as a pawn for far too long. Malachar wanted to claim her, wanted to use her power for his own purposes. He was about to learn that awakened sovereigns didn't submit. They conquered. The council chambers had never felt so oppressive. Ancient stone walls pressed in from all sides, carved with the histories of centuries past. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across the faces of 12 council members seated in their elevated positions of judgment. And standing before them, radiating casual menace, was Malachar Moonshadow. Lix's uncle was everything her fragmented childhood memories had whispered in nightmares. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair that gleamed like moonlight on steel. His eyes were the same violet as hers, marking their shared bloodline. But where her burned with newly awakened power, his held only cold calculation. He smiled when she entered, flanked by her three mates. A predator's smile, the expression of someone who'd already won and was simply waiting for everyone else to realize it. Niece, he said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey, how you've grown. The last time I saw you, you were barely 5 years old, crying over your parents' graves. Lix's hands clenched into fists. Zephyryn's steadying hands settled on her lower back, a reminder that she wasn't alone. That she had never been alone, not since the moment these three alphas had claimed her. You murdered them, Lix said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver. My mother, my father, you killed them and took their territory. I liberated that territory from weak leadership, Malachar corrected mildly. Your father was soft, believed in equality and giving Omega's rights, in diluting the pure strength of Alpha rule. He was destroying our bloodline's legacy. I simply corrected his mistakes. Councilman Marcus rose from his seat, his expression carefully neutral. Alpha Malachar has presented substantial evidence of his blood relation to Lixara Moonshadow. Documents sealed by the Moon Priestess herself confirming his identity as her paternal uncle and closest living relative. Documents that could easily be forged, Caspian growled. Not these, Marcus said, and there was something in his tone. Satisfaction. This was what he'd been working toward all along. These bear the sacred seals, unbreakable, unalterable. And according to pack law, they give Alpha Malachar legal guardianship over his niece until she reaches her majority at 25. She's mated, Zephyryn's voice was ice and iron. Bonded, claimed, the law is clear. A completed mate bond supersedes all other claims. Does it? Malachar's smile widened. When the Omega in question was only 21 when bonded, when she had no legal guardian to approve the match, when the council itself arranged the bonding without proper consent from her family. He moved closer and Lix could smell him now. Death and ambition and barely contained rage beneath the civilized veneer. By law, the bond is invalid. My niece was a minor legally speaking when you claimed her. Without family approval, without proper courtship, without any of the protocols required for sovereign bloodlines. Malachar's gaze swept over the three brothers dismissively. Your bond can be dissolved. Will be dissolved, and Lixara will come home with me where she belongs. Never, Lix breathed. Power crackled along her skin, violet light dancing across the ancient symbols marking her as sovereign. I chose them. I choose them still. You have no claim on me. I have every claim. Malachar's voice hardened. I am your blood, your family, your rightful guardian, and you, little niece, have been kept in ignorance far too long. Do you even know what you are, what power runs through your veins, what responsibilities come with that sovereign mark? He gestured to the symbols glowing on her skin. You can command any wolf, bend them to your will with a single word. Unite or destroy entire territories with your voice alone. That kind of power requires proper guidance, proper training, not the indulgence of three alphas who want nothing more than a compliant mate in their bed. Daxon stepped forward, his golden eyes blazing. You don't want to guide her, you want to control her. Use her power to expand your territories. To build an empire on the backs of wolves forced to submit to a sovereign voice. And what do you want? Malachar shot back. To keep her weak and ignorant, to hide her away in this backwater pack pretending she's nothing more than a pretty Omega to warm your beds. She's destined for greatness, for ruling, for power that could reshape our entire world. She's destined to choose her own path, Zephryn said quietly, dangerously. Not have it forced on her by family or council or anyone else. Magistrate Theron's staff struck the stone floor, demanding silence. The ancient wolf's blind eyes somehow found Lix across the chamber. The law is clear, he said, his voice heavy with centuries of judgment. A sovereign Omega cannot be bonded without family consent if she is under 25 years of age. The mate bond, while formed, is not legally recognized. Alpha Malachar has the right to dissolve it and claim guardianship. Unless, another council member interjected, Elder Rhiannon, one of the few females on the council. Unless the sovereign herself invokes the right of challenge, ancient law gives any sovereign the ability to contest family claims through trial of power. Malachar's smile faltered, just for a moment. She's untrained, barely awakened. A challenge would be suicide. Then you should have no concern accepting it, Lix said, and her voice carried power now. Sovereign power, the kind that made even the council members shift uneasily. I invoke the right of challenge, Uncle. Your claim against mine. Your power against mine. Winner takes all. The chamber erupted. Council members arguing, pack witnesses shouting, chaos threatening to overwhelm the proceedings. But Malakar's eyes never left Lix's, and in them, she saw the truth. He'd been planning this, had wanted her to challenge him, because he believed with absolute certainty that he would win. I accept, Malakar said. The challenge will be held at moonrise, in the old way, to submission or death. No, Zephron started, but Lix's hand on his arm stopped him. This is my choice, she said softly. You gave me that, the freedom to choose. I choose to fight for us, for our bond, for the life we're building. He'll kill you, Caspian said bluntly. He's had decades to master his power. You've had days. Then teach me. Lix turned to face her three mates fully. We have hours until moonrise. Teach me everything you can. Help me understand this power. And trust that when the moment comes, I'll know what to do. Daxon's vision sight activated, his eyes going distant as he looked at possible futures. When he came back, there was pain on his face, but also hope. I see you, he whispered, standing in violet light, commanding, conquering. The path is dangerous, but you walk it, and you win. Then let's make sure of it, Lix said. They withdrew to a private training ground away from prying eyes and council politics. The afternoon sun beat down on packed earth, and Lix stood in the center while her three mates circled her like planets around a sun. Sovereign power is voice-based, Zephron explained. Command in your tone, absolute certainty in your words. When you speak, reality bends to match your will. But it costs, Caspian added. Every command drains you. Use too many, push too hard, and you'll burn yourself out, possibly permanently. So you have to be strategic, Daxon finished. Choose your moments. Make every word count. They spent hours drilling her, making her practice the sovereign voice on small things first. Commanding stones to move, water to freeze, fire to dance. Each success sent power surging through her, intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. And each time she pushed too far, felt the drains start to overwhelm her. Her mates were there, grounding her, channeling their strength through the mate bond to stabilize her. They couldn't give her power, but they could keep her anchored when the sovereign gift threatened to consume her. He'll try to make you angry, Zephron said as the sun began its descent. Rage makes the power surge, but it also makes you sloppy, predictable. You have to stay calm, centered, in control. How, Lix asked. How do I stay calm when he's threatening everything I love, when he murdered my parents and wants to use me as a weapon? Caspian cupped her face gently. You remember why you're fighting. Not for revenge, not for pride. For us, for the future we're building. For the pack we'll lead together. That's your center. That's your anchor. Daxon pressed his forehead to hers. And you remember you're not alone. Even if he chains us, even if he binds us in silver and forces us to watch, we're with you. Through the bond. Always. The moon rose blood red over the challenge grounds. Every wolf in the territory had gathered to witness this. The youngest sovereign in 3 centuries facing her uncle in a battle that would determine not just her fate, but the future of their entire world. The grounds were ancient, a circular arena carved into bedrock and marked with symbols of power. Wards glowed along the perimeter containing whatever happened inside, preventing outside interference, ensuring that only the challenger's power would decide the outcome. Lix stood on one side dressed in simple white that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Her violet eyes blazed with barely contained power. The sovereign marks on her skin pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Across from her, Malakar wore black armor, ancient and ornate. He looked like a warrior king from forgotten times. Confidence radiated from every line of his body. Last chance to submit, little niece, he called across the arena. Acknowledge my guardianship. Come with me willingly. I'll even let you keep your little mates as consorts once you're properly trained. I submit to no one, Lix called back, least of all a kinslayer who murdered his own brother for power. Malakar's expression darkened. Your father was weak. He deserved what he got. And your mother, his smile was cruel. She begged before the end, begged me to spare you, promised anything if I just let her daughter live. The words were designed to enrage her, to make her strike wild and unthinking. Lix felt the fury rising, felt her power responding to the emotion building toward an explosive release. But then she felt them. Through the bond, 3 steady presences, 3 anchors holding her firm. We're here. We believe in you. We love you. Lix breathed, centered, let the rage transform from wild emotion into cold determination. She saved me, Lix said quietly, hid me, sealed my power so you couldn't find me. Everything I am, everything I've become is because of her sacrifice. And I will not dishonor it by losing control now. Magistrate Theron's staff struck the ground 3 times. Let the challenge begin. May the moon goddess guide the worthy. Malachar struck first, not with claws or teeth, but with pure, sovereign command. Kneel. The word crashed over Lix like a physical wave. Her knees buckled, her body responding instinctively to the alpha command layered beneath the sovereign power. She hit the ground hard, gasping. The crowd roared. This was it. This was how fast it would end. But Lix's hands pressed flat against the ancient stone, against the symbols of power carved there by sovereigns long dead. And she felt them, generations of her bloodline, all those who'd come before, all those who'd faced impossible odds and survived. No, she whispered, then louder. No. Her own sovereign voice, young and untrained, but backed by absolute conviction. The command to her own body overriding Malachar's order. She stood, shakily, painfully. But she stood. Malachar's eyes widened, just slightly, just enough to show he'd expected that to end it. Clever, he acknowledged, but you're already exhausted. That cost you, didn't it? Fighting my command. How many more can you take before you burn out completely? He was right. Lix could feel the drain. One command to counter, his one command, and she was already breathing hard. This couldn't be a battle of raw power. She'd lose that fight. It had to be strategy, precision, making every word count more than his. Malachar circled and Lix turned to track him. Your mother told me about the bond, he said conversationally. How it works for sovereigns. How you can draw strength from your mates. Quite useful, quite dangerous, easy to exploit. He raised his hand and Lix felt reality shift. Felt Malachar's power reaching beyond the arena toward where Zephyrin, Caspian, and Daxon stood chained in silver at the edge. Sleep, Malachar commanded. The 3 alphas' eyes rolled back. Their bodies went limp against the chains. Unconscious. Unavailable. Lix's anchors. Her strength. Torn away with a single word. No, she lunged forward, but Malachar's mocking laughter stopped her. What will you do now, little sovereign, without your mates to stabilize you? Without their strength to draw on, you're nothing but a frightened girl playing at power. He was trying to break her mentally, trying to make her believe she couldn't win. And part of her wanted to believe it, wanted to surrender and end this before she got herself killed. But another part, the part that had spent 3 weeks running before finally choosing to stand and fight, the part that had learned to trust and love and claim her own power, that part refused to break. You're right, Lix said. I am frightened. I am young and untrained, but I'm not nothing. She spread her arms and violet light exploded outward from her skin. Not a command, not yet. Just power. Pure, raw, ancestral power that had been building since her awakening. I am Lixara Moonshadow, daughter of murdered sovereigns, mate to 3 alphas who taught me that strength comes in many forms. And I am done being afraid of what I am. The light intensified and Malachar actually took a step back. Impossible. You haven't been trained. You don't know how to channel that much. I don't need training, Lix interrupted. I need truth, and the truth is you're terrified. Terrified that I'll be everything my parents were, everything you could never become. A sovereign who leads with love instead of fear, who builds instead of destroys, who protects instead of conquers. She took a step forward, and the light moved with her. You killed them because you knew you'd never measure up, never be worthy, never be chosen by your own pack, let alone by mates who'd die for you. Another step. Malachar backed away, his confidence cracking. You don't know what you're talking about. I know everything, Lix said, and her voice carried sovereign command now, not directed at him, directed at the ground, at the ancient symbols, at the very foundations of the challenge arena. Reveal. The stone beneath their feet began to glow. Images formed in the light, memories trapped in the bedrock for 16 years. Memories of the night Malachar killed his brother and sister-in-law. The gathered pack gasped as the scene played out. Malachar's ambush, her father's desperate last stand, her mother's final moments sealing away her daughter's power with ancient magic and her own life force. This is how sovereigns truly fight, Lix said, not with commands that force submission, with truth that demands justice. The images continued, showing how Malachar had hunted for young Lixara, how he'd spent years searching for the hidden sovereign child, how he'd manipulated the council planted spies, engineered the arranged bonding to 3 powerful alphas, who could serve as both guardians and eventual weapons once he reclaimed his niece. Councilman Marcus's face appeared in the memories. Meetings with Malachar. Plans to dissolve the bond. Strategies to control the awakened sovereign. The council was compromised. The pack was compromised. Everything had been moving toward this moment according to Malakar's design, except for one thing he hadn't accounted for. Lix had chosen, had claimed her power not for conquest or control, but for love, for protection, for building something better than the broken system that had allowed wolves like Malakar to prosper. You wanted me awakened, Lix said. Wanted me to reach my full power so you could use me. But sovereign power doesn't work that way. It can't be stolen, can't be controlled, can only be given freely. She raised her hand, violet light coalescing into something solid. A blade made of pure command, not silver, not steel, just concentrated truth and will. I give you one chance, uncle. Surrender. Confess your crimes before the council. Accept judgment for what you've done, or face what happens when a sovereign stops holding back. Malakar's face twisted with rage. You think you can threaten me? I've killed dozens of sovereigns, taken their territories, absorbed their power. You're nothing compared to what I've faced. He lunged his own power, manifesting as claws of shadow and malice. The attack was brutal, overwhelming, backed by decades of combat experience. Lix didn't dodge, didn't block, didn't counter with violence. She spoke one word, the most powerful command a sovereign could give. Truth. Reality itself bent. The word echoed across dimensions, across time, across every bond and connection that tied Malakar to the world. And it compelled, not action, but honesty. Absolute, undeniable, soul-deep honesty. Malakar's attack faltered, his mouth opened, and words spilled out that he never intended to speak. I killed them because I was jealous, because my brother was loved and I was feared, because his Omega chose him freely while mine was forced, because their daughter showed sovereign markers from birth while I had to claw for every scrap of power. I killed them, and I'd do it again because I deserved to rule and they deserved to die for being better than me. The confession rang across the arena, across the entire pack grounds, undeniable, unretractable, damning. The crowd's roar was deafening, calls for justice, for execution, for blood to answer blood. But Lix felt only sadness. Looking at her uncle, she saw not a monster, but a broken wolf who'd let jealousy poison everything good he might have been. I'm not my parents, she said quietly. I won't kill you, won't become what you are. She turned to the council, to Magistrate Theron. The challenge is won, the truth is revealed. I claim my freedom, my bond, and my right to lead as I see fit. Malakar Moonshadow is hereby stripped of all titles and territories. He will be exiled to the wastelands alone to live with what he's done. You can't, Malakar screamed. I demand trial by combat. I demand silence. The sovereign command wrapped around him like chains. Malakar's mouth snapped shut, his voice stolen by power he could no longer resist. Lix looked at him, this wolf who'd shaped her entire life through absence and fear. You wanted to teach me about power, about ruling, about what it means to be sovereign. Consider this your final lesson. True power isn't in domination, it's in mercy, in choosing to be better than those who wronged you. She released him from the command, gave him back his voice, watched as he was led away by pack warriors broken and defeated. And then finally she ran to her mates. The silver chains were already falling away, their unconscious state broken by Malakar's defeat. Zephyrin caught her as she threw herself into his arms, Caspian and Daxon wrapping around them both. You did it, Zephyrin breathed against her hair. My brilliant, powerful, merciful mate, you won. We won, Lix corrected. I couldn't have done it without you, without knowing you were there even unconscious, without everything you taught me about choosing strength over vengeance. What happens now? Caspian asked. Lix looked at the gathered pack, at the council members, some shocked, some satisfied, Marcus already being detained for his part in the conspiracy. Now, Lix said, we rebuild, we reform, we show them what leadership looks like when it's chosen instead of forced. The coronation took place 1 week later after the chaos had settled and the full extent of council corruption had been exposed. Half the council members were replaced through new elections. Voices were given to ranks that had never been allowed to participate before. The ceremony was held in the Grand Hall, transformed from a place of judgment into one of celebration. Lix walked in on her own power, dressed in deep violet that matched her eyes. The sovereign marks on her skin glowed softly, and her three mates walked beside her. Not behind, not ahead, beside, equal. The pack filled every available space. 300 wolves and more come to witness history. The first triple Luna coronation in recorded memory. The first time a sovereign had chosen to share power instead of hoarding it. Magistrate Theron stood at the center, ancient and wise, his blind eyes seeing more than most. We gather to recognize what the moon goddess has already blessed. A bond forged in challenge, a love built through choice, a power balanced by wisdom. He turned to Lix. Lixara Moonshadow, do you accept the title of Luna? Do you accept the responsibility of leadership? Do you accept the burden of protecting this pack with all the power you possess? I do, Lix said clearly, with the understanding that leadership is service, that power is protection, and that the pack I lead will be one where every wolf has voice and choice. Zephyrin, Caspian, Daxon, Nightshade, do you accept this sovereign as your mate, as your Luna, as your equal in all things? The three brothers answered as one. We do. Magistrate Theron raised a crown wrought of silver and set with violet stones, ancient, passed down through sovereign lines for centuries, recovered from Malakar's stolen treasures and returned to its rightful heir. He placed it on Lix's head, and power surged through the hall. The mate bonds flared visible for a moment, violet light connecting Lix to each of her alphas. The pack felt it, the weight of true leadership, the promise of better days. I present to you, Theron's voice rang out, Lixara Nightshade, Sovereign Luna, bonded mate, queen of the Nightshade pack. The pack's howl of acceptance shook the very foundations. She turned to her mates, to these three alphas who'd caught her in the dark and taught her to fly. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for choosing me, for giving me the space to choose you back. Zephyrin kissed her forehead. Caspian took her hand. Daxon smiled with that knowing expression that said he'd seen this future all along. And together they faced their pack, their people, their future. The celebration lasted until dawn. And when Lix finally returned to their chambers, exhausted but happy, she found her mates waiting with something unexpected. A small journal, leather-bound and ancient. We found it among Malakar's things, Daxon explained. Your mother's journal. The real one. Everything she wanted you to know. Lix opened it with trembling hands. Her mother's handwriting filled the pages. Stories of her childhood, explanations of her power. And on the final page a letter. My dearest Lixara, if you're reading this, then you've survived. You've awakened. You've become everything I knew you would be. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to guide you. Sorry I had to hide you away, seal your power, make you believe you were ordinary. But I saw what Malakar would do. Saw how he'd use you if he found you while you were still vulnerable. So I hid you in plain sight, gave you to a pack that would protect you without knowing what they protected. And I sealed your power with one condition: it would only awaken when you found your true mates. When you were loved and protected by those who would die for you, I knew the council would try to use you, would arrange a political bonding, but I also knew that if the moon goddess deemed those mates worthy, if she recognized them as your true match, the seal would break, and you would be strong enough to face whatever came next. Trust your power, my daughter. Trust your mates. Trust yourself. You were never broken. You were never weak. You were waiting to become exactly who you were meant to be. All my love, always, Mother Lix closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears, grateful tears, understanding tears. She knew, Lix whispered. All along she knew. Knew you would find me. Knew you would be worthy. Knew I would choose you. And she was right, Zephyrin said, pulling her close. About all of it. They held her that night, three massive bodies curved around hers protectively. And as Lix drifted off to sleep, crown still on her head and mates surrounding her, she finally understood. She'd been caught pleasuring herself in the dark, but she'd found her kingdom in the light. The Omega who'd run from her bonds had learned that some chains were actually wings, that some prisons were actually sanctuaries, that being caught by the right wolves wasn't capture, it was freedom. And she would spend the rest of her days making sure every wolf in her territory knew it, that they could choose, could fight, could win, could be caught and still soar. The moon rose full and bright over the Nightshade pack, and in the Luna's chambers, three alphas and one sovereign Omega slept wrapped around each other and the future they would build together. Chosen, claimed, complete, forever.